Frequently, you can locate an epithelium simply by using the lowest or medium magnification of the microscope, because epithelium lines tubes and surfaces. Look for a lumen or a clear space indicating where a surface would be. For instance, here is a tube lined by cells. This tube has been cut transversely, so it appears in an almost circular profile. It happens to be a section through the esophagus, but the esophagus is partially constricted, so the wall is thrown into folds. So here's the lumen, and so this is a surface that I'd expect to be lined by an epithelium. If the tissue has been stained with hematoxylin, the high density of epithelial cell nuclei often reveals the epithelium as a purple line or mass. So when I view tissue sections, I always begin my examination with minimal magnification to figure out the orientation of the tissue and what part to examine under increasing magnifications to examine an epithelial surface. In this image, you can see part of the epithelial surface lining the esophagus at higher magnification. But I'm only showing you this image at this early stage of your histology course to review what the characteristic features of epithelia are. First, there is always a free surface to a space or a lumen. The epithelium then is the lining layer of cells. The epithelial cells are very closely associated with each other and will be bound together by junctional complexes that you can't see with the light microscope. This epithelium consists of a very thick layer of cells, which I'm going to ask you to keep in your memory because I'm going to make reference to that later on. And finally, a basement membrane supports the epithelium and attaches it to underlying connective tissue. And again, this is difficult to see with the light microscope. Epithelia are also avascular. That means they don't have a direct blood supply. Nutrients diffuse through to the epithelial cells from blood vessels in the underlying supporting connective tissue. So now, having defined an epithelium, it's also important to know how an epithelial surface is classified and therefore named. An epithelium is first classified according to the number of cell layers. This is an image taken at a high magnification of part of one of your salivary glands. Here are a number of small tubes with clear lumens, and each is lined by an epithelium. If the epithelium is only one cell layer thick, and use the nuclei as your guide, it's called a simple epithelium. So here are examples of a simple epithelium. Don't get confused by areas where the tube has been sectioned obliquely. Concentrate on areas where the tube has been sectioned transversely or perpendicular to the epithelial surface. If the epithelium of a tube has 2 or more cell layers, it is a stratified epithelium, such as you see here in this larger tube. You can clearly see that there is one row of cell nuclei stacked on top of another row of nuclei in this transverse section through this tube. Now, in addition to its number of cell layers, an epithelium is further classified according to the shape of the surface cells. Cells are usually described as being squamous or flat, cuboidal, columnar or tall. In some specific tissues, such as exocrine glands, the secretory epithelial cells may occasionally be referred to as being pyramidal, with their apex adjacent to the lumen of a duct. So this epithelium here, and again here, would be called simple cuboidal epithelium, because the cells are most likely cuboidal, having nice round nuclei. Whereas the epithelium lining this larger tube would be referred to as a stratified cuboidal epithelium, because the surface layer of cells are cuboidal. Although I can understand that you may look at this part of the epithelium and say, this looks like a stratified columnar epithelium, because these surface cells have elongated nuclei. I'll try and resolve this confusion later. Now over here is a section through a small vein, even maybe a venule, almost fully collapsed and devoid of any blood cells, as they've probably been flushed out prior to the tissue undergoing the fixation process. Small veins or venules have extremely thin walls and are lined by a simple squamous epithelium. The single layer of cells are very flattened or squamous, with elongated flat nuclei when seen cut longitudinally in the direction they are aligned along the vessel wall. In some instances, epithelia may be further named depending on the presence of specializations on their apical surface, such as cilia, but also keratinization, that is, keratin on the epithelial surface. Given this basis for classification, I'll now show you examples of a simple squamous epithelium, a simple cuboidal epithelium, and a simple columnar epithelium, and then a stratified squamous epithelium, and maybe more rarely a stratified cuboidal and a stratified columnar epithelium. Then I'll describe some epithelia with surface specializations.